Hey guys, welcome to episode 5 review Invincible from us here at Dweeb Culture. Dweeb reviews Invincible, episode 5. That actually hurt. Wow. Uh, Hands down, in my opinion, the most intense, serious, violent, craziest episode since the first episode. Since that ending scene of the first episode, what happens in this episode here today this morning as I woke up early to review is absolutely wild. I want to get right into it so we can start talking about this. So we're going to cut over and do what we've been doing recently, breaking it down into the 3 major storylines. First, well, it would seem that the trailer thumbnail is finally revealed in this episode here, as we see Invincible get beat down by a gang of villains that probably going to make a reappearance, specifically one in particular, but we're going to get to that. So far, every episode we've been talking about the additional information that they've been revealing about Omni Man, and we get into that a little bit here. Throughout the course of this episode, not much, but we do see a major change within a few particular characters. So Omni Man is continuing to train Invincible. He seems to be focused on big picture as a hero. And he even comes out and says that, I believe. I think later on in the episode, there's a conversation between Invincible and Titan, a new character. Well, not a new character, but a character that we are given a deeper dive into, where he mentions the big picture nature of what his role as a hero is. And obviously, that's what's being trained into him by Omni Man, as we see them deal with an incoming asteroid capable of destroying the entire country, as we see these little moments of training where Omni-Man wants Invincible to focus on his training and becoming stronger and better, and Invincible's kind of caught in between his civilian life, his hero life, and wanting to be a good guy. That's, in a brief moment, going to come kind of head to head in a conversation that Invincible has with his mother and father over dinner. But before that, Debbie Grayson, her story progresses and the investigation into Omni-Man progresses, as we see that she finds what I was calling into question last week, not really knowing what it was. It did look like a book. It just wasn't quite, I wasn't quite sure if it was some sort of tape recorder or what, but it would seem that it's a notebook left behind by Damien Darkblood prior to him being exorcised back to hell. The notebook has, the human skin face on it, very similar to the Evil Dead and the Book of the Dead. And as Debbie reviews through what ends up just being Damien Darkblood's investigative notes, her suspicion of her husband continues. So it would seem that, man, my first few episode reviews, I was wrong. I thought Debbie already had some sort of knowledge of what Omni-Man was like. But it's now that we get the little reflections back on how he talks to people, the things that he finds important, and she starts to piece together their history together and whether or not he is actually a hero. Like I said last week, I think this is a suspend the disbelief. Okay, we're just going to go with it and assume that she's not seen signs prior to this and that Omni-Man's behavior really has changed just now because the introduction of Mark's powers, really. I mean, that's kind of what we're given to go on. That's what it looks like. It carries on from there. The relationship between Debbie and Omni-Man is starting to get a little rocky. She is angry. She's obviously suspicious. We get these little scenes where they're kind of being not rude to one another, but they're on opposite viewpoints. They're not standing side by side. They're not united in their approach to raising their son, which is what this one was particularly about. This particular scene was about. And finally, towards the end of the episode, we see that Debbie's not just some naive housewife. Well, I mean, not really a housewife at all. She's, a real estate agent. But she's not naive to Omni-Man, his abilities, and his powers, because she wants to buy time in her house to investigate and has mapped out exactly where she can send him to buy herself, I mean, a down to the second particular amount of time to investigate through her house and look for any signs that Omni Man's been lying to her. Uh, she sends him on this little errand across Europe and across the world, which takes him 20 minutes, which she times out perfectly. And finally, through searching her house, she finds bloody clothes. Now, it would look like this is the bloody uniform that Omni Man retrieved from the hospital after being treated following the brutal murders at the end of episode 1. And I think that kind of plays and is made clear to us from the earlier scenes and a lot of the reflection that takes place regarding him asking for his suit back specifically, saying it was classified, things that we saw in the second episode, kind of in the aftermath of the first episode's ending. As for Omni Man's involvement, we see that he is present during the final fight scene, which is, don't worry guys, we're going to get to that in just a moment because that's obviously the most exciting part of this entire episode. But he's present during the final fight scene, probably is the one that tips off the Guardians of the Globe to come help Invincible as Invincible's losing, but does not interfere himself. And we have to assume that had he interfered, he could have saved a lot of pain and suffering from his son and possibly the lives of some other people that, we'll talk about it in a moment. The final scene we get involving Omni Man revolves him returning home, just as Debbie is receiving presumably a phone call about Mark being injured. The next major part of the episode, that's not the main A-plot of this particular episode, which is the fight, which really goes into Titan, Invincible, and the fight that leads at the end, is Mark's continuing relationships. We'll get through this one quickly. We didn't see too much. Essentially what we're seeing is that the hero life is tearing apart Mark's relationships. We see that he's late to everything with Amber, and that Amber is growing increasingly annoyed. That he's late to work and eventually quits work after his boss threatens to cut his shifts and cut his hours. He's late to school and gets sent into the principal's office. And he's late to an important dinner that he promised he would be to by apparently a couple hours. He's late and misses it completely and misses the opportunity to meet and socialize with Amber's mother. On the flip side, with Eve, we see that her home life is very, very odd. And I kind of get what they were doing with this. It's a little nonsensical to think that her parents are cool with her being a part of a superhero team because they have such faith and trust in Rex, who is an idiot that we know by now. But this is the circumstances that they set up for Eve. Her parents do not want her to be a superhero. Because she's single now and doesn't have a man to protect her, her father and her mother are no longer interested or invested in her being a hero, and they want her to live a more normal life. Meanwhile, as we already know from the past episode, Eve's kind of considering that herself. She's kind of considering dropping the hero identity. We do get a scene where the normalized relations between Eve, who we learn's real name is Samantha, Amber, and Mark all sort of come to a head as Eve and Amber start to develop a friendship themselves, which of course is only going to complicate the love triangle. Mark is able to be honest with Eve. He has still chosen not to be honest with Amber, and that makes itself clear at the end when Eve gets the call about Mark being hurt, and Amber is left in the dark. Now, I think we have prior to Mark being injured, there was a lot of foreshadowing that this was the end of their relationship. In the next episode, we'll see really, does Mark being injured change Amber's mind about whether or not she is going to break up with him because he missed their final date, if you will, volunteering at the food shelter. I don't know. We'll see. I would have a hard time believing that's going to happen. I imagine that the relationship between Amber and Mark is going to draw out throughout the season before even Mark are given a chance. I mean, I guess I haven't actually looked into how long this particular season is, but if we're operating off how most Netflix and Amazon video shows go, it's probably a 10 to 12 episode season. So we're nearing kind of the halfway point, I'm imagining, going into this. But finally, the main plot of this story is really where everything breaks down into what ends up being a pretty crazy climax with possible character losses. We don't really know yet. They introduced this Titan character. We saw him once before in a very minor scene where he was assisting bank robbers during the course of the robbery. He had a fight with Invincible and lost. And they really try hard to humanize him throughout this episode. They introduce him as not only the villain that's robbing banks, but having a soft heart. As he's carrying out his criminal missions, he's still trying to protect innocent people or even supporting innocent people and giving them money. And we get introduced to why he's involved in crime in the form of the crime boss Machine Head, who is blackmailing him because he borrowed money and then no longer owes the money, but now there's a threat on his family. It was pretty clear where they were going with this. I think overall the episode was paced very well. This part, building up Titan and his background, I think could have been executed a little better because ultimately we don't still care about Titan. They don't do enough in this episode to make him really important to us, but they spend the first about 6 to 8 minutes of the episode doing these interstitial cuts to just scene by scene by scene of showing, see, Titan's not that bad of a guy, but oh well. It's ultimately worth it in the ending that it comes to, because after his family's getting after he's getting blackmailed with the threat of potential violence against his family, then Titan reaches out to Invincible, and we get this hero-villain pair-up that carries out through the end of the episode. He convinces Invincible through a couple other scenes that he can be trusted, and together they plan an attack to take down Machine Head. Now, Machine Head has a second in command called Isotope, and Isotope's power is to teleport. At least that's the only power that we know of so far. Going into this plan, Titan tells Invincible that Isotope has already been handled. And that's important. And it comes into play at the end of this, which we saw. There is brief cuts to the Guardians of the Globe. It would seem that they're developing friendships, at least the younger members are, but are still not working cohesively as a team. Black Samson really is a leader figure, having the previous experience from being a member of the Guardians of the Globe. Even though Robot tactically leads the team, he's right in assessing how the individuals all operate, and as he demonstrates later on in this episode, he has like a general heroic interest in what he's doing, whereas the others don't all necessarily have that same interest, but we'll see with that. Finally, we get some context to why Robot freed the Mauler twins, we think, from prison, because he wants their cloning technology. And we kind of saw that at the end of the last episode, particularly when he had obtained a blood sample from Rex, and then we saw the little mutated fetus thing being cloned. There's a couple different reasons why this could happen. The things that come to my head, at the end of this exchange between the clones and Robot specifically mentions that he wants their technology on tissue regrowth. So it could be that he's trying to use the cloning technology to develop advanced healing, possibly to save his team. And that might be a more justified good guy reason for why he would free the Mauler twins to get their cloning technology. It could also be for a couple other reasons. Whatever creature it is that he's cloning could be, a villain to come in the future. Or the thing that kind of sticks out to me more right now is most of the chaos within the Guardians of the Globe seems to revolve around Rex and his decision making. Robot was really not happy with Rex for what he did to Eve and causing Eve to leave the team. He's not happy with Rex for the friendship with Monster Girl, for the potential, I guess, romance still in Duplicate. And he took Rex's blood, and we've only seen that he took Rex's blood. So I am curious if he has a plan to kind of clone Rex and replace him, hoping to replace him with maybe a more controlled, more subdued version of Rex. But we'll see. Because the way this episode ends, it is still likely that it may just be to create additional healing technology, or even just to use the cloning process to replace any members that might die of the Guardians of the Globe to keep that team strong. So it could be going a more nefarious way. It could be going a more positive, good guy route. I don't know. We'll see as it carries on. But really, ultimately, it all comes down to this fight at the end. Crazy fight. They fall into a trap, both Titan and Invincible, as they storm the base. And while they introduce a few different types of villains here, different power sets, really there's only one villain that matters. And it's this lion alien. This thing single-handedly wipes out Titan, Invincible, and the Guardians of the Globe when they all come in. And I mean Invincible in a completely brutal fashion, as he just gets maced to the midsection. His chest collapsed in, having difficulty breathing. He's bleeding. He's capable of injury. I mean, this is the first time in this episode that the first time so far that we've seen that Invincible's capable of being seriously injured. He's almost killed, presumably, at the end of this episode from this strike and from the damage that was dealt through the course of this fight. And he's not the only one. This lion creature, when you see it, looks like he kills Monster Girl and Black Samson. They do, however, kind of start looking to medically treat them at the end of the episode. And when Monster Girl shifts back, her skull's no longer exposed. So I'm not quite sure how this will go. I would imagine that Monster Girl is going to survive this, just because I think she has more of a role to play moving forward. Black Samson, though, this might be the end for him. And he kind of goes out like a badass in where he just throws his armor and tech to the side. We know he has no powers, and just runs in an attempt to save Invincible before Invincible gets crushed and killed. The villains flee. This lion creature says that it's from some other world and only came here to find a good challenge. Kind of reminds me of like a War World Mongol type situation from Superman fans, but he determines that everybody else is an insect and not worth his time, and then teleports out. The other villains mysteriously leave, and Isotope does not appear when Machine Head calls. So when the rest of the GDA arrives, they're able to arrest Machine Head. And of course, we saw that was all part of a larger plot by Titan to take over Machine Head's role. So we're going to see more from Titan. And I like Titan. I mean, like I said, they did a little bit to create a foundation for him, but realistically, I think the big takeaway from this episode is Mark being as injured as he was, the potential loss of characters in Black Samson and Monster Girl we'll see, obviously, moving forward. And finally, the GDA capitalizing off the opportunity to obtain Mark's blood, Viltrumite blood, where they're testing it and they cannot find any way to kill Viltrumite cells, which kind of raises a question because it looks like Mark's on the edge of death at the end of this episode. But perhaps Viltrumites truly are invincible or immortal, and we'll see how quickly Mark recovers from this particular assault. We know that Omni Man recovered pretty quickly when he faced the original Guardians of the Globe. Great episode. Very exciting. Very excited to see what happens next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm really becoming a fan of this show. It does make me want to go check out the comics, but I'm not. I'm going to stay and watch it with you guys and kind of figure it out every episode, every week as we get more and more info and see more. But definitely since episode 1, this is my favorite episode. Episode 5 comes immediately after episode 1. And episode 1, just because it does such a great job introducing the characters and then that twist ending. But I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Please sound off in the comments below if you have any questions or anything you'd like for us to talk about. And thank you for checking out Dweeb Reviews Invincible. Stay tuned to Dweeb Culture for some more content. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.